Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. Before this story starts, here's the piece I want you to hold on to. When people ask you to protect a family by swallowing your own hurt, that is a warning sign, not wisdom. In this situation, the real red flag was not just the cheating. It was how quickly everybody decided my silence would be more useful than my dignity. This is a dramatized fictional story, but the lesson is real. The moment your pain becomes housekeeping for other people's mess, you need a boundary, not another explanation. If you have ever seen a family protect a betrayal instead of the truth, stay with me, because this story gets deeper than it looks. And before we begin, like this video, share it with someone who loves intense relationship drama, and subscribe for more original cheating, betrayal, and revenge stories that hit hard. My name is Solomon Reed, and the year my marriage cracked open, Baltimore had one of those sticky summers where the row house bricks held heat long after dark. I was 37, married 7 years, and still naive enough to think being dependable meant being safe. I worked for the city water department, mostly compliance inspections and emergency call-outs. I came home tired, smelling like metal, wet concrete, and chlorine. My wife, Adrienne, used to laugh and say I smelled like public works and stress. I would kiss her forehead anyway, and she would hand me a plate covered with foil and ask if the number 13 bus had been packed again. Adrienne had a gift for making ordinary rooms feel finished. She labeled our spice jars with neat white tape. She bought vanilla-scented trash bags because she said kitchens should never smell defeated. She folded towels in thirds, not halves, and kept pens in a blue ceramic mug from a diner near Patterson Park, where we had our first real date. I was the opposite. I like half-done things. I restored old tube radios in the basement, kept screws in cigar box, and left jazz records leaning against the wall instead of shelving them. Somehow it worked. Her order and my clutter had made a home. My younger brother Micah never kept a home for long. He kept moods. He kept half-plans. He kept shiny ideas like sneakers still in the box. Micah was 32 and handsome and polished. Restless ways some men are when they have learned that charm will buy them another week. He cut hair at a barbershop off Greenmount, wore spotless white sneakers even in bad weather, and carried a silver beard pick in his pocket like it was part of his identity. Women liked him. Men forgave him. My parents called him creative whenever he failed at something that would have gotten anyone else called irresponsible. Our parents, Leonard and Paulette Reed, lived in a narrow brick house on the west side, 2 blocks from the church where my mother ran the Women's Day breakfast, and my father still acted like every folding chair in the fellowship hall answered to him personally. Publicly, they were steady people. Clean suits, firm handshakes, warm potato salad, scripture ready for every situation. Privately, they had been leaning on me for years. I paid half their mortgage after my father retired from the MTA early. I covered my mother's prescriptions when her insurance got stingy. I did it quietly because I loved them, and because I thought that was what sons did. Micah knew I was helping them, though nobody said out loud. Adrienne knew too, because she handled our household budget and all our automatic transfers. She would sit at the dining room table every Sunday evening with her laptop open and one ankle tucked under the other, asking, "Same amount to your parents this month?" I always said yes, sometimes more, especially after Micah's sneaker resale business collapsed and I paid the back rent on the tiny studio he thought was going to become an online empire. He thanked me with a hard hug and a promise to get right. My mother called me a blessing. My father called me a man. The first thing that felt wrong was small enough to dismiss. Adrienne started mentioning Micah too often, but never in a way that sounded suspicious at first. Micah says a new barber crossing the carryout is stealing clients. Micah says Dad's porch steps need another coat. Micah stopped by and fixed that loose kitchen drawer. His name was suddenly in the room, even when he was not. I noticed because Adrienne used to talk about books, school gossip from her payroll office, or the tomato plants she could never keep alive on our back steps. Now she kept bringing up my brother, like a weather report. There was also laughing. Not broad, open laughter, the quieter kind. the kind that belongs to two people who have established a private current under a public conversation. At Sunday dinner, I would come back from washing my hands and find them grinning at each other over some half-finished sentence. At the church crab feast in Druid Hill Park, I watched Adrian flick Old Bay off Micah's wrist with a napkin like she had every right in the world. He thanked her too softly. She looked away too fast. My stomach tightened, then loosened again because I did not want to be the sort of husband who turned every glance into a crime. I made a decision right there, though I did not know it would cost me. I chose trust over suspicion because I had grown up watching my uncle destroy his own marriage by accusing his wife of things she had not done. I remembered the poison of that house, the way everybody started speaking in defiant little bursts. I told myself I would never become that man. Adrian was my wife. Micah was my brother. I had history with both of them, years with both of them. A few odd looks at a crab feast did not outrank vows and blood. That was what I told myself, and for a while it almost felt noble. That summer my schedule turned ugly. A contamination review on the east side had our department rotating night inspections, and I was gone more than I was home. I would leave before sunset and come back after dawn, passing corner stores with metal gates halfway down and men drinking coffee from styrofoam cups on stoops. Adrienne stopped waiting up. She said my hours made her feel like a roommate. I heard the complaint, but not the loneliness inside it. I answered with practical things. It is only for 6 weeks. The overtime will help. We can take a trip in October. I kept offering future comfort for present neglect. We had also been trying, unsuccessfully, to have a child. Nothing dramatic, just years of hope with no result and too many carefully neutral doctor visits. It had made us tender in some places and brittle in others. Adrienne took each negative test personally, even when she pretended not to. I responded by researching vitamins and insurance coverage, which was useful but not warm. There are different ways to fail someone. Some people disappear. Some people stay and become all logistics. I did the second one. I told myself I was being strong for us. Adrienne probably experienced it as distance dressed up as maturity. When she told me she was pregnant, it was raining hard enough to blur the alley behind our house into one gray sheet. I had just come up from the basement after getting an old Philco radio to hum for the first time in months. She stood in the kitchen holding a mug she was not drinking from and said my name twice before I looked up properly. Then she said, "I'm pregnant." For one whole second the room had no walls. I laughed, then cried, then held her so tight she told me to breathe. I remember the vanilla trash bag scent, the rain on the window, my own heartbeat in my ears. I called my mother first. That should tell you everything about the kind of son I still was then. Paulette screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone from my ear. She said, "The Lord is faithful," and then immediately started talking about bassinets and christenings and names. My father got on the line and said, "About time this family had some good news." Micah came by that night with a stuffed Orioles bear for the baby and a bottle of sparkling cider, because Adrian was not drinking. Everybody hugged too long. My mother cried. My father kept clapping my shoulder. Micah smiled, but he looked sick. That was the second thing that felt wrong. Adrian looked frightened, not just overwhelmed. Micah would not meet my eyes for long. And my mother, who usually asked 100 practical questions, barely asked any. She just watched Adrian with a kind of careful softness I did not understand. At one point she said, "No matter what, this baby is family." It struck me as an odd way to phrase joy. No matter what. Those words stayed in my mind the way a siren does after it's passed. Still there even when the street is quiet again. A week later, I was at Malcolm's barbershop on Greenmount, letting him fix the beard line I never managed properly on my own, when a man in the next chair asked if Michael was my brother. I said yes. He grinned and said, "Man, your family keeps that barber busy." I asked what he meant. He shrugged and said he had seen Micah out near the harbor with a pretty light brown woman in those office clothes, laughing like they were on a date. I told him he probably saw my wife. He nodded, then said, "Maybe." The way he said it made my back go cold under the cape. I went home that evening meaning to ask Adrian one direct question and accept one direct answer. She was in the kitchen slicing peaches over the sink. I watched the knife move and thought how ridiculous it would sound, me asking about a stranger's loose comment and my own nervous imagination. So I softened it. I asked whether she and Micah had been spending time together while I worked nights. She did not flinch. She said, "Sometimes he checks on me." Then she turned and asked, "Do you want me to sit in this house by myself every night?" That should have been a separate conversation. Instead, it ended the first one. My mother called the next morning before I left for work. "Do not start trouble in your home over small things," she said. I had not told her about the question. Adrian had. That landed hard. Then my mother kept talking, saying pregnancy made women emotional, saying my work hours were unfair, saying I needed to be gentle. I asked why she sounded like she was managing a situation instead of celebrating a grandchild. She got quiet, then said I was reading into things because I was tired. My father got on the phone and told me not to interrogate my wife. I sat on the edge of the bed after that call and felt something old and ugly wake up. The proof, when it came, was stupidly ordinary. Adrian had left her tote bag by the back door. I was looking for the electric bill and found a folded receipt from a prenatal clinic we had never discussed. Not our clinic, not our doctor. On the line marked emergency contact was my mother's number. On the line marked payment card, the last 4 digits were Micah's debit card. I knew them because I had helped him dispute fraudulent charges once. I stared at that paper so long the numbers blurred. There are discoveries that break your heart, and then there are discoveries that insult your intelligence first. I confronted Adrian that night in the basement because I did not want to scream in the kitchen where we used to dance while leftovers warmed. She stood beside my workbench, one hand over her stomach, and denied nothing once I showed her the receipt. She just kept saying, "It was complicated," which is one of those phrases people use when they need every ugly detail flattened into something survivable. I asked whether the baby was Micah's. She sat on the bottom step and cried before answering. That was enough to answer enough. When she finally spoke, she said, "I do not know for sure." My body went strangely calm after that. I had another decision to make then, and it could have gone a different way. I could have driven straight to my parents' house and burned every bridge in one night. I could have called Micah out in front of his clients. I could have told our whole church before sunrise. Instead, I chose paperwork. Maybe that sounds cold, but fury can make you sloppy, and I had already been made a fool once. I called a lawyer friend from Morgan State. I had not spoken to in a year. She told me to stop talking, start documenting, and get a prenatal paternity test arranged through counsel if Adrian agreed. Adrian agreed too quickly, which told me she was more afraid of uncertainty than of losing me. While the test was being scheduled, more truth leaked out in pieces. The affair had not happened once. It had been going on for 4 months, mostly during my night rotations. Sometimes at my parents' house after Sunday dinner. Once in my own living room while I was on an emergency call in Dundalk. You can survive hearing a thing that bad only by leaving your body a little. I remember focusing on irrelevant details. The hum of the dehumidifier, the dust on a record sleeve, one loose thread on Adrienne's cardigan. What I did not know yet was how long my parents had known. I found that out at what my mother called a family conversation, which is a phrase that still makes me tired. Their dining room table was covered with placemats and hypocrisy. My father sat at the head like he was chairing a board meeting. My mother had made sweet tea. Micah could barely look at me. Adrian sat with both hands wrapped around a glass she never lifted. I asked one question first, and only once. How long? My mother answered before anyone else. Since the 7th week. I did the math and felt the room tilt. 7 weeks. That meant they had known before the first time my mother cried on the phone about becoming a grandmother. Before my father slapped my back and told me the read line was secure. Before Michael walked into my house with that stuffed Orioles bear and handed me a lie in plush fabric. My mother started explaining immediately, saying Adrian came to her scared, saying Michael was panicking, saying they wanted certainty before blowing up a family. My father added that stress was dangerous for the baby. There it was. Not for me, not for marriage, not for truth, for the baby. Then came the sentence that split my life into before and after. My father looked me in the eye and said, "Whatever that test says, we need you to handle this quietly." Quietly, as if the ugliest thing my brother had ever done to me was a stain on their carpet. My mother reached for my hand and said the neighborhood did not need our business, the church did not need gossip, and Adrian did not need shame while pregnant. Micah sat there breathing like he was the one under attack. I asked if any of them had considered what I needed. Nobody answered right away, which was enough. The paternity result came 3 days later. Micah was a father. I was sitting in my truck outside a carryout on North Avenue, engine running, untouched lake trout on the passenger seat, when I read the email twice, and then once more just to feel the blade go in cleanly. I did not cry. I did not hit the steering wheel. I just laughed once, sharp and ugly, because suddenly every weird look, every rushed defense, every sermon about grace made horrible sense. I had been paying the electric bill in a house where people were using my name as insulation while building another family behind my back. That same afternoon, I learned something else. Adrian had transferred $12,000 from our renovation savings over 3 months. The money had gone to Micah in small enough amounts not to trigger anything dramatic, and then in one final chunk to catch him up on shop rent and buy furniture for the baby. She told me my mother said it would all stay in the family anyway. There are betrayals of the heart, and then there are betrayals that come with line items. Seeing those transactions was almost clarifying. Grief got out of the way and left me with structure, numbers, dates, choices. I moved with the steadiness of a man carrying hot oil. I changed passwords, opened a separate account, pulled my direct deposits, froze every card tied to our shared savings. I filed for divorce the next morning. I notified my bank about the unauthorized transfers. I told my lawyer to ask for an accounting of every dollar. Then I called my mortgage company and removed the extra amount I had been paying toward my parents' house each month. That last part hurt more than the filing. I had been carrying them out of love, not duty, but love without respect becomes a subsidy for your own mistreatment. When Adrian realized I was not going to absorb this politely, she moved into my parents' house within 48 hours. My mother called to say it was temporary. My father called to say I was being hard-hearted. Micah texted, "I know you hate me, but we need stability right now." That sentence almost made me admire his nerve. The same people who had hidden a pregnancy from me now wanted me to preserve their comfort through the transition. They spoke about stability like I had been the storm, and not the roof they pulled off with their own hands. For a week, I kept quiet in public. I went to work. I took the number 94 once when my truck was in the shop and watched people do ordinary Tuesday things, while my life looked like somebody had kicked the side out of it. I thought maybe silence would at least preserve my own dignity. Then my aunt called from Randallstown asking why I had put a pregnant woman out. A deacon cornered me after Bible study to say forgiveness was manly. My father had started shaping the story, not the whole truth, just enough of it to make me look cruel and then look burdened. That was my third big choice, and I made it with clear eyes. I stopped protecting the family name. I did not rant. I did not post vague threats. I wrote one factual email to the church trustees and copied the family group thread. I included the paternity result, the transfer records, and a timeline. No adjectives, no sermon, just the truth. Then I blocked everyone for the evening and sat in my basement beside a half-repaired radio while Cicely Tyson spoke from an old movie on the television upstairs. By morning, silence had changed shape. People did not call to counsel me anymore. They called to apologize. Consequences did not arrive like thunder. They came like overdue bills. My father was quietly removed from the church finance committee after the trustees learned he had known about the money transfers and told me to keep quiet instead of telling Adrian to return the funds. My mother stepped back from choir leadership because women who used to ask for her sweet potato pie recipe no longer trusted her version of events. Micah lost clients at the barbershop, not because of some public shaming campaign from me. Men just do not like sitting in a chair under scissors with someone they think is no code. Adrian hated living with my parents almost immediately. The same house that had felt safe enough for secrecy felt cramped once secrecy was gone. My mother hovered. My father sulked. Micah started staying out late again, saying he needed air, which is what men say when the consequences of their choices begin to smell like diapers and rent. Adrian called me twice to ask whether we could settle like adults. What she meant was, could I stop insisting on a full financial accounting? I said no. If she wanted peace, she should have built it before she asked me to subsidize its replacement. The divorce took 11 months, which is another way of saying it took pieces out of me in every season. The judge did not care about church image or family speeches. She cared about records. My premarital down payment mattered. Adrienne's transfers mattered. The paternity result mattered only in relation to the deception around marital assets. In the end, I kept the house. Adrienne had to repay part of the money through a structured settlement that probably felt small compared to what she had taken from me emotionally, but I had stopped looking for courts to measure heartbreak. I wanted legal clarity, not moral poetry. Meanwhile, my parents' finances began sagging without my monthly support. I had not realized how much weight I had been carrying until I put it down. The pharmacy balances stacked up first, then the gas bill, then the adjustable mortgage payment they had been barely managing even with my help. Instead of downsizing early, my father doubled down out of pride. He refinanced to cover arrears and to help Micah and Adrian buy baby furniture after the divorce settlement hit. When I heard that from my cousin Dana, I sat at my desk at work and stared at a spreadsheet for 10 minutes, amazed by how stubborn people can be with a cliff in plain sight. Their son, my nephew, was born the following spring. I found out because my mother mailed me a birth announcement with a little blue ribbon on it and no note inside. The baby's name was Josiah Micah Reed. He had my family's eyes and, according to Dana, Adrienne's mouth. I put the car in the kitchen drawer, where I kept expired coupons and takeout menus. Not out of cruelty, out of honesty. I felt nothing clean. No joy, no rage, no tenderness I could trust. Just a tired ache and the strange humiliation of knowing a child had entered the world carrying the shape of a betrayal he did not choose. Micah tried for a while. I will give him that. He took extra appointments. He did mobile cuts for older men who did not want to come into the shop. He posted fatherhood quotes and pictures of baby bottles lined up on the counter. But responsibility did not fit him the way it fit a man who had trained for it. It fit him like a jacket borrowed for a funeral. He resented the hours. He resented Adrienne's exhaustion. He resented my absence most of all, because every bill he had to face without me in the background reminded him exactly who he betrayed. The price they paid was not dramatic enough for gossip, but it was real enough to bruise every day. My parents lost their house 16 months after I stopped helping. Not because I took it from them, because they had built their budget on my loyalty and assumed I would keep funding them after they broke faith with me. The bank notices became court letters. The court letters became boxes. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental near Edmondson, where the walls were thin and the parking was terrible. My mother's upright piano went into storage. My father's smoker grill was sold to a man from Catonsville. When my father called the first time after the move, his voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. He did not yell. He did not quote scripture. He just said, "We are paying for it now." I stood in my backyard holding a hose over the tomato plants I was finally keeping alive, and for a second I almost pitted him enough to slip back into my old role. Then I remembered the dining room table, the sweet tea, the word quietly. I told him I was sorry they were struggling, but I would not be returned to a system that treated my love like a utility line. A month after that, I saw Micah by accident at Sinai Hospital. I was there with a co-worker whose wife had surgery, and Micah was near the pharmacy window holding Josiah on his hip while bouncing a diaper bag with his knee. He looked older, not wiser exactly, just worn. Josiah had a little knit cap and those serious baby eyes that seemed to accuse the whole world of being too loud. Micah spotted me and froze. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then Josiah sneezed and Micah laughed, and the sound was so ordinary it nearly undid me. We sat in plastic chairs under bad fluorescent light, because neither of us knew what else to do. Micah did not ask me for money. I respected that. He said, "I know you think I stole your whole life." I told him I did not think so. I knew it. He nodded and looked down at his son. Then he said something that mattered because it was ugly and plain. "Mama told Adrian to keep letting you think the baby was yours until after the shower. She said once you held the child, you would stay." I had suspected manipulation. Hearing its exact shape still made me cold. I went home from that hospital angrier at my mother than I had been in months. Not because it was new pain, because it explained the depth of the plan. They had not just protected Micah. They had almost conscripted me into raising the evidence of my own humiliation so everybody else could keep a cleaner story. That night, I took the birth announcement out of the drawer and stared at Josiah's face for a long time. I did not blame him, but I also did not mistake innocence for obligation. That distinction saved me. Children can be blameless without becoming your assignment. My life, away from all of them, had become quieter and stronger in ways I had not noticed while I was surviving. I got promoted to senior compliance supervisor. I painted the basement and finished 3 radios all the way through. I started running in Druid Hill Park before work and discovered that grief behaves differently when your body is moving. I made friends who knew me as Solomon, not as somebody's son or husband or reliable older brother. A woman named Nia, who taught 8th grade science and laughed from her chest, started meeting me for coffee after Saturday farmers markets. I did not rush it. I just noticed I could feel warmth again without flinching. The next time my mother reached out, it was not to ask for money. That surprised me more than anything. She asked if she could meet me at a diner on Reisterstown Road, the one with the orange booths and the pie case that never looked fully honest. I almost said no. Then I said yes because I wanted to see what an apology looked like when it no longer had a shopping list attached. She arrived early in a raincoat too thin for November and looked around the room like she was entering somebody else's wedding reception. Age had settled into her face all at once. Paulette did not cry at first. She wrapped both hands around her coffee and said, "I confuse preserving a picture with preserving a family." Then she told me about the rental, about the embarrassment of borrowing folding chairs for Josiah's first birthday, because half their things were gone, about how my father barely spoke some days. She admitted she had weaponized faith because she knew Scripture carried weight with me. She admitted she had counted on my loyalty the way irresponsible people count on an emergency contact. None of it repaired anything, but it was the first time she spoke to me like I was owed truth instead of management. I told her I was not coming back to be their cushion. I told her forgiveness and access were not the same thing. I told her she would never again get to decide what I should swallow for the sake of appearances. She listened without interrupting, which might have been the first real act of respect she had shown me in 2 years. Before we left, she said, "I know you think all of us lost because of what we did. You are right, but you're the only one who learned to stop the loss." I thought about that for days afterward. The revenge, if that is what you want to call it, was never me ruining their lives. It was me refusing to keep rescuing people who broke me and then asked me to smile through it. It was true with dates attached. It was closed accounts, signed papers, withheld access, and the end of automatic forgiveness. My brother lost the ease he had mistaken for manhood. My parents lost a house they thought my devotion would always help hold up. Adrian lost the soft landing she assumed she could leap between. And I lost an illusion that had been costing me more than I knew. That was the price. Everybody paid for it. If this story kept you hooked from beginning to end, like, share, and subscribe for more original relationship drama stories with real emotion, hard consequences, and unforgettable endings. And tell me in the comments, did Solomon handle this the right way, or would you have made them pay differently? When I think back on the nursery money, the church email, and that hospital chair under fluorescent lights, the lesson is not that pain should make you harder. It is that boundaries are often the only honest way to stop pain from becoming a family tradition. I did not heal by pretending the betrayal meant nothing. I healed by naming exactly what it cost, refusing the role they wrote for me, and letting consequences belong to the people who made the choices. That is quieter than revenge stories usually sound, but it lasts longer, and it leaves you with yourself intact. The end.